This episode is sponsored by DS, a team of makers, marketers, and entrepreneurs that help businesses transform their brand experience and unlock growth like never before. Are you a CMO, founder, or business leader looking to level up your brand and marketing? Head over to weareds.com and let's explore what is next for your business. That's weareds.com. Visit us to learn more. Hey, what's going on, entrepreneurs? This is Robert Roach, executive producer for Forward Obsessed. And if you are building businesses, you know that you never have enough resources to get everything done that you need to get done for your new business. All right, and that's why we're proud to say that one of our sponsors is Das Good. That's DAAS Good. Das Good is a done-for-you, creative, on-demand service for entrepreneurs. This is for businesses who need great creative without a huge budget and without a lot of time to focus on it. If you want to get the important things done like pitch decks, awesome branding, incredible websites, but you want to do it without the hassle, without the headaches, without the massive budget, then Das Good is for you. Head over to dasgood.design. That's DAAS good.design. Mention that Forward Obsessed sent you and save $1,000 off of your first month of service. Let us know what you think of them. We're excited to hear about it. And with that, enjoy the show. Remember, stay Forward Obsessed.
Welcome to Forward Obsessed, where we talk to breakthrough business leaders and rising entrepreneurs about their journeys, origin stories, and aha moments.
I'm not going to lie, I'm so damn excited for you to check out this episode of Forward Obsessed. On this episode of Forward Obsessed, we had Sam Parr. And let me tell you something, I've been following and fanboying on Sam Parr for a long time, just because the way this dude thinks, the way this dude puts out ideas and growth hacks and brute forces companies from $0 to $5 million and then gets really smart about knowing his place in the world. The story is amazing. And you're going to hear how he started in a small place in Missouri and how now he's doing some of the biggest things with some of the biggest founders. Not only am I a member of his community, Hampton, which he built up, which is the world's leading community for top tech entrepreneurs and CEOs. A little bit of a plug there, Sam. But what you're going to hear about on this story is just incredible. It's how he became who he is, what that moment is, and ultimately the different things that changed his life, from building and selling a company to Apartment List to getting fired after he got hired from what is now Airbnb. And there's a really good story around that, so stick around for it. You'll also hear about how content visibility led to him making a pretty big impression on his now wife. So on this episode, you're going to hear about Sam Parr, and not just Sam Parr from My First Million, not just Sam Parr who sold his company to HubSpot, which was the hustle, of course. You're going to hear about the ins and outs of the way that Sam thinks and how you yourself can get better at hiring and growing and building companies. So thanks so much for tuning in. Just one more reminder, please, please, please take a moment, share this podcast with somebody else so we can keep making awesome episodes and keep having awesome guests on. Go on forwardobsessed.com, like, subscribe, and comment wherever you can. It's going to help us find more amazing listeners and viewers like yourself and get more amazing people on just like Sam Parr. And without further ado, enjoy this episode with Sam Parr. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Forward Obsessed. I'm your host, Pete Senna, joined by always
David Salinas.
And I'm excited to have a new friend of the show, Sam Parr. Welcome to the show, Sam.
What's up, man? Thank you. So Sam, you are in from Connecticut. You're visiting.
I'm visiting Connecticut.
What do you think?
I think it's awesome. Dude, this is the first time that I've actually explored driving here. It's one of the reasons why I wanted to come and see Connecticut. It's awesome. I was telling you, I thought Connecticut was just full of white skirts and nerds playing tennis. And
There's a lot of those here though.
There are a lot of those, but it's been dope. It's so much prettier than I thought. It's awesome.
Yeah. So when I moved, I was 19 when I moved to Connecticut. My brother was going to chiropractic school in Bridgeport, which you drove past, and he said, "You want to take a ride with me to Connecticut?" I said, "Where the fuck is Connecticut?" And he said, "It's about 45 minutes past Grandma's house." My grandmother lived in Flushing by Citi Field. At the time was Shea Stadium. And I said, okay, I'll take a ride. And I got here and I was like, oh, it's beautiful here. And Bridgeport was a piece of shit, but I thought it was the greatest place. And I moved here a couple months later and hacked my way into college and then and have fallen in love with it. It's not that bad. It gets
I want to go see Yale's campus. I want to that's
next time.
That's like Harry Potter shit. It's like Hogwarts.
It really is.
It's like a mythical place to me. And but it's awesome. I'm staying in Westport. It's like a Dennis the Menace town. It's like white picket fence. It's beautiful.
You know, they film Indiana Jones there.
So
Wait, really?
Indiana Jones, yeah. So Indiana Jones, no, yeah. So Indiana Jones technically went to Yale. So when the most recent movie that they filmed, they recreated it here, and they actually filmed it on
yeah, it's awesome
on the campus.
I've been I've dug it, dude. My in-laws are from New York, and like they were like, Connecticut, we've never even been there. New Yorkers like don't know about Connecticut. It's quite funny how it's not popular, but it's awesome. It's like a hidden gem.
Yeah, they say it's in Fairfield County, they say is New York's bedroom. It's like
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, a lot of people. It's funny how people commute in and out. It's a huge commuter area for New York.
Yeah, it's awesome. I've thoroughly enjoyed it so far.
Well, there's a lot to take in as you want to acclimate. Let us know. We're big boosters, and the governor will love you. He's anybody that's doing business or entrepreneurial that there's a big flair to that in the States. So
Good. I gotta first look up who the governor is.
come on, he's here. He's here often. He's here. He's been on the show.
Really?
Yeah,
That's badass.
He's an entrepreneur. He sold a business. His wife is actually like a prolific VC.
Really?
Yeah, Annie Lamont. Yeah,
Dude, I've met like so many hedge fund and PE people. I know nothing about that world. I've only read books about like Ray Dalio, and now I'm meeting all these Bridgewater people. I'm like, is he really like that?
Will that be the next Sam's List? Will that be like Sam's List P edition?
Yeah, right.
our partner in the building that helped build this building just bought Dalio's campus in Westport. So it's on the other side of Westport, we're on the Woods side, and it's like this gorgeous, beautiful campus that they built. This unbelievable. It's like a double office building with a waterfall going through the middle. It was like serene. It was unbelievable.
Dude, it's cool to see that stuff because I lived in San Francisco for a long time, and I got to my wife worked at Facebook, and I remember going around Facebook campus, and I was like, take pictures. I'm like, this is awesome.
Yeah.
So now I'm going to do it for the PE hedge fund version of that.
And there's a lot of them for sure.
So let's talk about Sam. Let's talk about Sam. So
Yeah, we usually go back. So a part of the show is everybody has an entrepreneurial bug, right? Some people scratch it, some people don't, or niche, I should say. We try to figure out where did it come from? Like, not necessarily from you, but like before you. Like, was your dad an entrepreneur?
Yeah.
Your grandparents, your mom, anybody?
Yeah, basically, I was born and raised in St. Louis, Missouri, and like no one knows about Missouri, but basically think of like Detroit, and that's where I was raised. It's like a very dangerous area. It normally has one of the highest like murder rates in the country, and so it's kind of like this weird version of like hood and redneck. And I was raised there, and it was awesome. But my parents were entrepreneurs. We didn't use that word entrepreneur. They're just small business owner. My dad owned a freaking produce stand, like basically sell like not like a farmer's market, but like a stand that sold like fruits and vegetables. And my mother helped him, and they ran that. And then she became a school teacher. And then he eventually started a produce brokerage business, which basically just means you buy $1 million of onions from a farmer in Bakersfield or somewhere like that, and then you sell it to Walmart for like $1 million, and you make like 40 grand in profit. Like the margins are like nothing, but it's big numbers, but the profit's nothing. But he owned that, and it provided for our family wonderfully. But he was basically a small business owner, and that's kind of how I started. And then I just thought I was gonna like open up a restaurant or something. Like entrepreneurship, that the word entrepreneur wasn't really a thing. It was just small business owner. I was in like, I'll own a landscaping company, or I'll do something like that. But it wasn't like be a CEO. It was like do the work and hopefully have some part-time employees almost. And so I did that in St. Louis, where I was just like doing small stuff. Like I used to buy like sporting equipment from seniors in high school and like sell it on eBay because, you know, they were graduating and like selling their like track and field or spikes or whatever. And I did that. And then I went to college in Nashville, Tennessee, because I got like a little bit of a sports scholarship to go, and I wanted to be a Division I athlete, but it was a small school. And while there, I met this guy who had this TV show called American Pickers. Have you ever seen that?
Mm-hmm.
yeah, sure.
Like at the time in 2005 to 2012 or something like that. It was like literally the second most popular show on cable. It was like a big deal. And he would go to barns and like buy old cars or motorcycles, tell the history of it, and then resell it. I saw the guy just walking on the street in Nashville, and I was a huge fan. And I was like, Mike, I love you. Can I take a picture? And I was like, why are you here in Nashville? He's like, oh, I'm opening up a store here. And I was like, awesome. And I walked away, and I was like, wait a minute. And I ran back to him. I was like, Mike, let me help run your store. Like, I'm only 20, and by help, it was like minimum wage, like work at the register and like move stuff. And he was like, all right, that's fine. And so I kind of weaseled my way into that. And so when I worked there, he kind of taught me like what entrepreneurship was, because it was like a big thing. I don't know how much money he was making, but like there was days we were selling like 30 grand of t-shirts and like
Wow.
He had this big TV show, and I assume he was very wealthy. And so it was the first time I met someone who actually had more than a small business. And while there, we used to have this line of like these people from all over the, like basically the South, who would come and visit to like go to the store. And I was like, I'm going to create a hot dog stand for these guys because I don't know, there's nothing to eat around here. I'll just do that. So I opened up a hot dog stand. And so my hot dog stand was like that was my second like proper business. The first business I was selling liquor online, like this rare type of, they call it moonshine, but it was basically just whiskey in a mason jar.
I'm not letting you off without saying what the sign said, because you're the king of headlines. So what
it
the
was
sign?
Southern Sam's wieners as big as a baby's arm. And I used to I had these like cute girls that would work with me and stuff. But like I was also selling this whiskey online because I was doing the hot dog thing, and then I also had this like whiskey online that I was doing as well. And that thing was making a ton of money, like $1,000 a day when I was in class. But that's fucking illegal. Like I didn't realize that I was breaking the law. And I like asked the school like entrepreneurship program, I was like, hey, I got this letter. Am I breaking the law? And they're like, yeah, you're breaking the law. And I was like, oh shit, I better shut that down. But the internet was so much better than being outside in Nashville in June when it was 100 degrees selling hot dogs. And I was like, the internet's where it's at. And so I heard about this company called Air Bed and Breakfast. Mm-hmm. And I was like, this thing's awesome. This is going to be the biggest thing ever. And so I
love this story, by the way.
Yeah. And I cold emailed the founder and I was like, I think you can make your website better and increase conversions by doing X, Y, and Z. And he had probably, in his brain, he was like, yeah, dude, like we already do all this stuff. But I appreciate that you had the initiative to email me. Are you in the Bay Area? And I was like, yeah, I'm in the Bay Area, which I didn't know what that meant. I thought Bay Area meant LA. I'd never been west of like Colorado. Like I didn't know anything.
So you're like, I'll buy a plane ticket.
Yeah. He's like, all right, we'll come to the office Monday. So I was like, oh shit, I got to get out there. What's the Bay Area? I guess that means San Francisco. And so I like Googled it all. And I went out there and I interviewed with him. He offered me a job, went back to college, left all my stuff and like left school, moved out to San Francisco. The day before I'm showing up for my job, he calls me, or the company calls me, and they're like, you lied. You said you didn't have a criminal record. You do. And in college, I was a little bit of a wild man. I got in trouble. I got a DUI. I got in trouble for fighting. And I thought they weren't going to do a background check. And they did. And they caught me. And he was like, we don't hire liars. And I was like, oof, you're right. I'm wrong. You got me. I'm busted. And so
I had already committed. You had an apartment and everything.
Yeah, I moved out there. I had nothing. I had a couple grand and an apartment, and it was horrible. And I was like, what am I going to do? And so I met a guy out there randomly because I was staying at his Airbnb during my visit to interview at Airbnb. And he was like, I'm working on this idea for a roommate matching company. And I was like, cool, can I join you as your partner? And we did that. Didn't make that much money, but we ended up selling it after a year. I made like 100 grand. And that was kind of my start of like internet entrepreneurship.
That was apartment list that bought that, right?
Yeah. It was basically an acqui-hire. It wasn't like, but like I got like $100,000 plus salary and I got like 30 grand up front or something like that. It wasn't like significant at all. But the roommate matching thing was making money. The way it worked was we would like post these ads on Craigslist where it was basically in San Francisco at the time. If you moved to San Francisco, it was a lot of young people looking for one room in a 3-bedroom apartment.
Tinder for roommates.
Yeah. And so what we did was we would contact these landlords and we'd be like, hey, your 4-bedroom apartment, give it to me. And I'm going to put ads as a 1-bedroom and I'll get like, we would literally get like 400 people apply to that. And we would host these parties where they could team up and rent the 3-bedroom apartment. And we would get paid to doing that. And then eventually we turned it into an app, which was like Tinder for roommates, which was dumb because Tinder was just starting out and we should have done Tinder for Tinder. Like it should have been a dating app. I actually met a girl who I dated on the app.
That's so funny.
And like, we should have done that. That was stupid, right? But we ended up getting like a lot of users and it turned into a thing.
So, question for you, just real quick, is did you ever consider that your dad's business that was largely based on arbitrage? Because that's the game he's playing, the game of arbitrage. You ever consider that idea of arbitrage just stuck with you? Because I feel like a lot of your businesses that you go on to start plug into that kind of arbitrage network effect model.
I didn't think of it that way, but I thought of it. So like my father, they basically like, they would go, nowadays they go to Florida in the wintertime. And he would bring literally a fax machine, a phone to plug into the wall and like a file cabinet. And he was just on the phone, like calling people all day. And so what I learned, I was like, dude, I'm just going to call people all the time. So like still to this day, like when I want to get customers or like start something, I just pick up the phone and I cold call people. So like this recent new company I have, Hampton, the way I learned about it was there's this other company called Vistage that recently sold for $2 billion. And the guy who led the PE firm that bought it, I saw his name and I just cold called him and I was like, hey, look, man, I don't want to sound like a douche here, but you're going to hear about this company I'm going to start. And I figure, let's just be friends now. And you spill the beans a little bit and I'll tell you a little bit about what we're going to do. And I just got lunch with them yesterday. We're still great friends. And so I cold call people all the time. I still do that.
So first of all, I love that. I'm a big fan of the art of the cold call. You talked about entrepreneurship. Back in the day, you just called it small business. Some people actually say that there's a big difference between the two. A small business is someone that works in a business. Entrepreneur is someone that solves problems. That's what I've heard as a definition of it. But what you've done is something, at least I've heard people call it hustles, right?
Yeah.
Like for me, growing up in Queens, I was a kid who was a hustler. Started making money at 12 years old. I found little ways to make money. Some of them pay off. Some of them just give you a little bit of money. Some of them may turn into $50,000, $10,000, or $100,000 as you had those wins. In your mind, is there a difference between a hustle, a business owner, and an entrepreneur?
I think you put on different hats. I think, and so what I think is world class at is I'm like really good at getting things to like 1 to 5 million a year in revenue. Mm-hmm. And then I'm really good at hiring executives to make it much larger. So like when I sold my last company, we were starting to do tens of millions in revenue.
Yeah.
I'm not capable of doing that, but I'm really good at brute forcing it. So like a startup, in my opinion, is the first like million in revenue, you brute force, and like I can like hustle my way to there. But then after that, you got to put on like an executive hat and it becomes like hiring. And that is where I'm good at hiring. And then I'm not good at managing once all those people are hired. But I think that it's about putting different hats on. I think the difference between a fast growing startup and a hustler is like the idea of like legitimizing it. And also like putting it on steroids. So like when we started the hustle, it was basically just a daily newsletter. People were like, newsletters are dumb. I'm like, yeah, because yours has 10,000 subscribers. Like, of course that's not going to be big. But what if you had like 10 million or 5 million? And I was always really good at being like, what if we just like put zeros behind this? So like the small hustle, like what if you had 1,000 employees? It wouldn't be small then. Like could the economics still work? And so I was pretty good at starting small, but seeing the vision and like actually making it a reality. So I think you start as like a scrappy person, but then what I struggled with, but now I'm better at, you got to like really quickly become like legitimate and do things the right way. But you also got to do things the wrong way early on to like throw shit together.
Got it. And then so now segueing into the hustle, you built a newsletter, a conference, a community off of the concept of the hustle, something that is now being looked at differently, where people are upset with hustle culture. It's getting a bad rap. What do you think? Yeah, it's toxic. It promotes the wrong thing. What do you think about that?
I think that I think you should just do whatever makes you happy. I think that so like first of all, I picked the name The Hustle. It was a bad name. Like we were in the business of news. We had journalists, and so it was basically a Wall Street Journal, but for like younger people in entrepreneurship and tech. So I think that A, it was kind of a bad name, but B, I think that like in the early days of a company, I grind. It's like 80 hours a week, but then like I actually think it's hard to do that for like a decade. And so I usually go in sprints. So it's like I'm working constantly, and then it's chill time, and it might be 30 hours a week. But it definitely averages to be like 40, like a pretty manageable, like 9 to 5. But you only get there once you like actually hire people who are able to like take the load off. I mean, when I think of hustle culture and like people who hate on it, I'm like, dude, I don't care. We'll just do whatever makes you happy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think it's ridiculous to call it toxic. I'm like, well, if you're happy, then it's not toxic.
Yeah, I would agree. I think those people tend to be the people that just don't have the discipline, right, to hustle, right? The people that don't have the ability to write a newsletter every single day.
Yeah, I think so. We used to host these events where it was like a conference. It was like a TED Talk, and I used to like tell these people. We would have like the founders of WeWork or Casper or pretty much any startup that was popular between 2012 to 2018. They probably spoke at one of my events because we had hundreds of speakers, and I would tell them to come in. I would be like, all right, you speak at 3, mic checks at noon. So be there at noon. But there's no mic check at a conference. The mics work. And so I really just did it so I could hang out with them in the green room.
Yeah.
And I would like hang out with these guys. And once I hung out with them, I realized that like they were so good at like they were still scared. They still had made mistakes and all this stuff, but they were so good at like persevering and like being like, yeah, but we're going to do it anyway. I just realized that like the world is malleable. And once you like realize that you can kick your dent in the world, it kind of becomes intoxicating. And so the difference between the people who do stuff and don't is like a handful of beliefs. And like once I got like drunk on that, it's like the world changed. And so like the idea of hustling, I'm like, well, do you want to make your reality or not? Mm-hmm. So if you do, you just make the decision, you can go and get after it. And so once you kind of like, it's almost like having bad eyesight and like putting on eyeglasses when you see that like you can shape the world to what you want. And I found that to be intoxicating. And so it kind of changed my opinion of like what it means to hustle. You know what I mean?
I want to build on that because I think there's something that the audience really is going to get value from, which is this idea of imposter syndrome. And one of the things I thought was really interesting that you said, I think it was on Andrew Wilkinson's podcast recently, where you said that when you were behind with these people, the reality is you didn't feel like most of them were smarter than you. You actually felt like...
I felt we were in the same ballpark. There was a couple people...
Except for Grammarly, right?
Yeah, there was a couple people who's like, I always say like, they just had more horsepower. Yeah. But like, not all of them.
Yeah.
They didn't all have that.
But I think that's important because and I see this even in being a member of Hampton, right? Where it's just like, you're surrounded by some of these prolific entrepreneurs that you just feel like are so ahead of you. But then when you get together at like one of the retreats that I was recently at Ojai, it was like, everyone didn't feel like enough. So
yeah, it's never enough.
Yeah, it's never enough, no matter how big or how small you're doing it. So you just got to do it, right?
Right, and that's intoxicating. Like it's almost like I don't know, like if this is a fair comparison, but Jamaica doesn't have that many people, but they're like really good sprinters. And of course, there's like some biological thing there. But it's like when you're surrounded by people who the assumption is that you can be great at something, it kind of like wears off on you. And so I got really lucky to be around a bunch of people in San Francisco who were like that. And you just see that like, this person's not 100 times better than me, but they're definitely 100 times wealthier or more. Therefore, I should do that too. And like, it just becomes like a matter of steps and time.
There's an energy to it. Someone said to me, if you hang out with 5 billionaires, you'll become the 6th.
Yeah.
Right. Like there's just an energy. I read one of the show notes. You talked about osmosis in terms of like being able to learn from people and to get the hang of things. I believe that when you're around people that are more successful than you, they say to grow, you need to subtract, right? Like you get rid of the people that are not adding to you, that are not giving you value. So that totally makes sense. I want to go into the hustle for a second because I don't know much about the business. Pete's been a big subscriber. I know of the brand. I mean, the brand was prolific. You started it with your own money. Did you have any co-founders or?
No, I started by myself, but I eventually brought someone on to be a partner. But for the first year or two, I think I was doing it by myself. But so the way it worked was originally it started, I'd sold the roommate matching company and I was like, what do I do next? So I started this conference called HustleCon, which was basically like TED Talk for entrepreneurs. And I made it popular by creating a newsletter. And in 6 weeks, so I had the idea and then the event happened 6 weeks later. That made $60,000 in revenue. And I was like, that was neat. I didn't expect that to happen. I did it again 8 months later and it made like, I think $200,000. And it was like $150,000 in profit. And I was like, wow, that's crazy. But like, I don't want to host a conference as my main business because if it rains or something, like you're kind of screwed. But it got popular because I created a newsletter where I would write these posts about each speaker. And I was like, all right, something's there. And I started doing research on the media business. And like basically at that time, Facebook was pulling back the reach that a Facebook page would have. So if you had 1 million likes, it started out where 500,000 people would see your stuff. And then it was like 200,000. It kept like decreasing.
Now it's like 200.
Yeah, it's like nothing now. But I was like, but this email thing, like once I get someone, they're going to come back like all the time if I can create good content. And I was like, I started talking to founders of media companies and I'm like, what's your ad rate for email? And they're like, it's $40 per 1,000 subscribers or $50 per 1,000 subscribers. And I was like, okay, so you're telling me if I email someone 5 to 6 days a week and I can get like 2 or 3 million people, I would have to do the math now, but I'm like, that adds up to where like, I think I can get to 100 million a year in revenue. And everyone was like, dude, no one like A, reads email like that. And B, advertisers won't want to put an ad in an email. I'm like, well, why does it matter? If you're on your phone, if you're in the Gmail app or Safari, like who cares? Like you do the same action. And I just did the simple math. I'm like, look, if you do this math, this adds up to where this works. And not a lot of people believed it. And I was like, this can definitely get 100 million in revenue. And so I started the hustle thinking, I started on basically 420, because that's an easy date to remember, of 2016. And I think we had 5,000 or 10,000 subscribers from the HustleCon email list. And I was like, we're going to send an email 6 days a week or 5 days a week with news, because that's a product that people want every day. And I think in the first year, we grew that to 100,000 subscribers, year 2, 500, year 3, 1 million. Now it has like 3 million. I don't know what it has now. But the revenue like totally like worked. And so now, and I sold the business when we were going to do 20 million in revenue. But now my competitors, and who are now my close dear friends, they are at 100 million in revenue. So that hypothesis was correct. And now newsletters are like popular. That's a thing. But back then it wasn't. But the business model was basically 3 writers writing a 1,500 email every single day. And then we had like 20 ad sales team, 20% ad sale, and each person had like $1 million quota. And it was like, let's scale up that way.
And you used 100% of the capital that you got from the sale, or did you take capital in?
Dude, it didn't take any money to start.
The 3 to 5 writers?
Well, I wrote it at first.
Oh, okay.
I didn't have employees at first. So basically I wrote the email every day. And then I got us to 30,000 a month in ad sales we didn't start advertising until like 60,000 emails. And we still hosted HustleCon. So I was able to make 300 grand a year in profit from that event.
Got it.
And so I used the conference money, and then I had low costs. I had 2 or 3 employees, and we were doing, I think year 1, we did $500,000 in sales. So I had enough money to like pay for people, but no, it was like no money to start it.
Totally bootstrapped. Yeah.
Totally bootstrapped. And then I was able to get the ad sale. Once I got the ad sales to 30,000, I was like, all right, I think there's demand here, but I don't know how to like sell ads at scale. So I hired an ad sales guy, and then it took off to like 100,000 in like 4 or 3 months after that. And so no, it was bootstrapped. It was a really capital efficient business. And then like we did other little hacks, not hacks, but like Facebook gave us a line of credit. So I didn't have to pay that bill for 60 or 90 days when we started advertising on Facebook. And then I convinced our advertisers to pay a net 30. So I had that like little 60-day spread or 30-day spread. So like little things like that, we were able to bootstrap it.
Cash flow's king, right?
Yeah. And eventually we did raise a seed round, which was stupid. I never should have done that, because I never went below the balance. Like our bank account like went up all the time, but it was basically bootstrapped.
Are you pissed off that you sold before you hit the 100 million?
No, because my goal was to get like throughout the business in year 1 and year 2, I paid myself 40 grand a year. And then I started paying myself a lot in year 4 when we sold. But like I felt pretty poor for most of the journey. And I think now the business, I don't know what it could do now. It could definitely be doing a lot. But I didn't know at the time, like I sold during COVID. I thought the world was going to end.
Yeah.
Like I didn't know what was going to happen. And my goal in starting the business was to make a lot of money by the age of 30. So I never had to worry about money again, because I was always scared of just being broke. So no, I'm happy that I did what I did. What I wish was that I gave equity to employees, and I gave equity to a couple investors. I wish I didn't do that, and I just owned the whole thing. And I had the foresight to realize this is going to be as good as I thought it was going to be, and I could just pay people a lot of cash and own it forever. But no, I'm very happy that I have financial security now.
And because you know that your vision was correct, because you've seen newsletters hit 100 million, you feel fulfilled because you're like, I knew that.
Yeah, it would be a lot nicer to have that money. But it's the second best thing is to like have the pride that my prediction was right.
The euphoria, as you talked about in being intoxicated, you used that word a few times. The euphoria of being right is when you're an entrepreneur is a lot. It's dopamine. It's just like, I knew it.
Yeah. And like, look, we're talking about the newsletter business. It's not like I'm putting people on Mars or like building electric cars or anything insane, but it's cool that it's like a thing. And me and 2 other companies, we pioneered it. And so that is like, that's pretty neat.
Well, it's far from the general store in Missouri, right?
Yeah. And so it was cool. And so basically at the age of 31, I had enough money. I never had to work again. And I was like, fucking A, like mission accomplished.
The thing I love about the business, the hustle, and it's something that we talk about here. People love the show, that watch the show. They tell us, oh, I love the show. I learned so much. And for us, it's like, we're doing it for the audience. But for me, talking to people like yourself and all the other guests we've had, we learned so much. How much of who you are today is attributed to the fact that you studied so many stories, from like the scammers that you studied all the way through to like the real businesses?
It's 100%. So I read a shit ton of biographies. And I have this massive document where I track what age when they were born, what age they started their apprenticeship, what age that ended, what age their real business started, what age it became a success. And I literally hundreds of them where I mapped it all out. And so I kind of like would reverse engineer. I'm like, this is a common mistake people are making. This is a common way that people are winning. I'm just going to copy that. And so like I do that like religiously. And so I track it, all that type of stuff in a really nerdy way.
Do you think you can build entrepreneurs?
I think that's like saying, can you build an artist? I think entrepreneurship and art to me are really similar. It's like, I think you either have it or you don't. I can make someone like better than they are, but like you have to have a compulsion or a good reason. So like I love immigrants because they come here for a better life. And I think that if your back's against the wall where it's like feed your family, like you could do something. But and I also think luck's a massive component. Like the difference between like someone like I could like brute force my way to like millions or tens of millions, but then like to get to like the billions, like there's a massive component of luck involved.
Yeah.
So I think luck's there, but do I think you could build? No, I think that you have to have a compulsion or some crazy circumstance where it's like survive or die. But I love those situations. I always like, haven't you heard that famous story of like some like conqueror who came to America and he like, I think it was Cortez, and he like
burn the boats.
And he goes, hey, watch this. And he burned the ships and he goes, now we got to survive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do that shit all the time. I love that stuff.
Yeah.
So if your back's against the wall, I think you can do great stuff. I just don't think that a lot of people have the courage to put their back against the wall.
I want to dig into something which is, I think, deeply personal to you, but I think a lot of people can get value from it. And I'm inspired to bring this up because of everything that's happened right now with the Nick Gray thing that's kind of blowing up all over Twitter.
Yeah, he's awesome.
Met him recently. He's awesome.
Have you heard the Nick Gray story?
No.
You want to do the quick one?
Yeah, basically, my buddy Nick, he is a sweetheart guy. He's a weirdo in the best possible way. He's a successful entrepreneur. He tweeted out, if you're a woman with a passport who wants to go see Japan, I want to take you on a date. I'll pay for your trip. And apply here.
The whole thing.
Yeah. And he got 400 women applying to go to this Japanese trip. And it sounds like a sleazy thing to do. He's not that at all. He's a sweet guy who literally wants to find a girlfriend. And like he like went through all these like 400 applications, like a job interview. He's like, I gotta see this woman's a cultural fit, whatever. And so he takes this woman to Japan, and now he's like documenting it all publicly, and like each time he documents it gets 1 million views. And so it's like gone like crazy viral. It's like the hottest thing going on the internet right now of him like in this girl.
And he's turning down all the press, right? Which is awesome. I think he's been doing a lot of that. So I want to dig into that, right? Because for two reasons. One, personal brand is something that you have massively seen the compounding interest value from, right? Something you yourself is seeing. I want to talk about that because a lot of people talk about building personal brand to grow business. And I want to talk about the power of visibility and how that can shape all aspects of your life. So you actually met your wife because people were writing about the fact that this motorcycle thing, right? So maybe you can tell that story because I feel like
basically after I sold my roommate matching business and I did the first event, I went and traveled the country on my motorcycle for 6 months or something like that.
What kind of bike?
The first half I rode from here to North Carolina, or from California to North Carolina on basically a dirt bike, a Honda XS650.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
That's terrible.
Yeah. But it was fun because I went off-roading and I like slept in a tent. It was awesome. And then on the way back, it was a B&W. I sold it and upgraded.
Got a touring bike?
Yeah. And so I got back and I met my wife because I saw her at this like restaurant. And I was like, with my friend Lily, I go, Lily, that girl is beautiful. I'm going to say what's up to her. And she walks up to me and I'm like, hey, and I didn't know what to say. And I was like, what's the difference between a chickpea and a lentil? She's like, what? And I was like, I don't pay $500 to have a lentil on my face. Get it? Chickpea on my face. And she was like, that's disgusting. And I was like, I'm in. And so I friended her on Facebook because I didn't ask for her number, but I friended her on Facebook because a bunch of people had written about this motorcycle trip for some reason. And I looked so cool as she was like browsing my Facebook. It was like my temporary cool guy phase. And so I looked awesome. And so she was into it.
That's awesome.
I'm actually riding a bike. I just booked a trip and at the end of the summer, I'm going to ride from Rome to Sicily.
That's sick.
To the before you.
What type of motorcycle?
I got a Ducati.
Which one? Multistrada?
Yeah, Multistrada.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have an Indian chief
Those are awesome.
course here in Connecticut. It's hard to ride for a long period of time.
Yeah, it'll vibrate.
Yeah, it's also it's just such a muscle, like it's got so much power in it. So my neck and my traps get so sore, but I'm really excited to do that. I've never taken a 5-day.
Oh, it's awesome. You're going to love it.
Yeah, I'm super excited to do it in Italy. We're doing the whole coast.
It's going to be so fun. It's so fun to like do that. And you just talk to random people at gas stations and stuff. It's awesome.
Do you still ride?
Oh yeah. I got a bunch of motorcycles. I've always had motorcycles.
Yeah, my buddy did it last year. He said he said just bring a hammock. He said we're just going to pop up hammocks at the beaches. And he's like, we got a couple of Airbnbs
and you could buy anything you need along the way, but yeah just go with nothing. It's
nothing.
Awesome.
Yeah. He said, don't bring anything. He said, just clothes, bring your gear. And he said, we'll figure it out. So
yeah, it's
super
awesome
excited
doing that.
Yeah.
I think it's great. I think it's such a good journey.
Yeah. You have bikes here?
Yeah.
Did you bring them?
I got a Royal Enfield
Nice.
that I customized. And then I have, I used to have a bunch of Yamaha XS 650s that are all customized, but they're like just artwork at this point.
Yeah.
But I always have Triumphs usually. I always have some type of motorcycle.
Nice. We have to ride at some point for sure.
Yeah. I'm a big motorcycle fan.
Yeah. I introduced you to my buddy. He lives here too. He has a couple Ducatis and he's a big entrepreneur, sold a couple companies. Yeah. Invented some
cars and motorcycles. I love all that shit.
Yeah. No doubt.
It's like art.
No doubt.
It's like art. I wanted, speaking of art, I want to talk about the emotional journey at the hustle, because the reason I discovered it personally is like, I like to be a trend hacker. I like to sort of like just soak up information, like you kind of like your anti-MBA thing, which you should definitely talk about. But you had some of the most prolific minds, that like the Trungs and the different people that just came in, and just the insights and stories that they would just pull out and put in Trends by the Hustle specifically was next level. So I want to just for a second, or I'm going to get yelled at by all the people that have written me in to ask them questions to talk to you about today. How do you cultivate that skill set of being able to spot trends and insights? And then how do you, more importantly, hire people that you were able to do that were just like next level at telling stories that nobody else is telling?
So you're referring to Trends. So we own this website called trends.co. The premise with the hustle was I'm going to build up this massive newsletter. And like when you have a newsletter of like 1 million people, let's say, I can send like 30 to 50,000 people to any website like every day. And I was like, great, we're going to build up this massive newsletter, and then we're going to build other businesses, and we're going to use our audience to sell to them. And so I had this idea of Trends because I loved researching and deconstructing companies. I was like, I'm going to build a subscription service, and hopefully they'll buy it. And it was so stupid. I charged $300 a year. I should have charged like $30,000 a year and sold it to companies. So that I made a massive mistake. But Trends like became like a $5 million business, recurring revenue business, very, very fast, less than a year. And in order to run it, and the hustle, I had to hire these like really interesting people to like do the work, even though I would do it right away and then I would get burned out, and I'm like, I need more people. And so I got really good at hiring, and I hire weirdos. So like Trung's like famous now, isn't he? He's got like 1 million followers.
Elon follows him.
Yeah, he's got like a ton of followers. When we hired him, he didn't have a Twitter. Steph Smith, who's now a big shot at Andreessen Horowitz and Brad Wolverton, Zach Crockett, all these awesome people we hired. Dude, they're all weird. Like I would talk to them and I'm like, you're fucking weird. And I love that.
How'd you find them? And talk more about that. Cause a lot of people so basically I like to consume their blogs. So like Steph had a blog and she had this beautiful headline that was called "To Be Great, Just Be Good Consistently." And I was like, that's a beautiful headline. And I just DM'd her. And I just started talking to her, and I was like, and a lot of these people who I hired were not writers or creators or whatever job I hired them for. They weren't doing that. And I would just see though that they had this thing in them where they're just quirky. And I love that. And I did a really good job of letting them. I had this joke at the office. I would say the hustle's where you can let your freak flag fly. And I would just hire these oddballs, and then I would hire these straight guys, like these like straight-laced guys to like do the selling and do the operations. But I did really good at just finding these quirky people, and I would just push them. I would be like, nah, it's not weird enough, man. Trung, you're like, I know you're weirder than that. Like, you got to put this in the writing. You got to be more quirky. And so we just did a really good job of just like pushing them and letting them be freaks. And I think that I'm a weirdo, and they were drawn to me for that same reason. But I just got really good at finding people, and I would always ask them. I call it the bottom fourth of a resume. So in your resume, you've got like your name, and then you've got like where you went to school, your work experience, and at the bottom, it's like what you're interested in. And I'd be like, dude, I don't care about any of this top stuff. Just tell me what you're interested in. And if someone could like
if I would be like, here's a simple question. What you study in school? Okay, I studied philosophy. Okay, what was the best class and why? And if they couldn't if you spent 4 years and hundreds of thousands of dollars at this school and couldn't entertain me about why you were passionate about this thing, you're a loser. And I don't want to be around you. But if you could capture my attention and I could feel your passion about why you're interested in a topic I don't give any I don't care about, you got some juice in you and I want to know about it. And so I would always ask them about things like that, or a variety of questions for the bottom fourth of the resume. And that's how I would find them.
And you're just finding these people on Reddit, Google, whatever?
Yeah, just cold email, cold call. And they were like, dude, Trung was like, I don't do this as a job. I'm like, yeah, I know, but you want to? I think you're great. And same with Steph. She was like, I'm a product manager. I can't do this writing stuff for a living. And I'm like, no, you can. You already do it as a hobby. Now I'll just pay you money to do it. And so I would just find these people like that. And we just had a really good culture of, my skill set is hiring. That's one of my skill sets. But we had this good culture of just people who we let them be themselves.
I want to explore the art of the cold call, because you brought it up twice on the show already. And I think that it is probably one of the biggest things that holds entrepreneurs back, especially when they're a little creative or technological.
They're afraid of it.
Yes.
Yeah.
But you clearly don't have that fear. We know where it came from. You talked about your father.
You want to know where it came from? I read in this book, in order to meet girls, you had to get good at talking to them cold. And it said,
Neil Strauss?
Yeah, the game.
Yeah.
I read it when I was 8th grade.
Yeah.
And
that's early.
And well, yeah, I was a dork, and I was I looked like Napoleon Dynamite, and I wanted to be a girl. And I need all the help I can get. And someone said dude, a good way to get over fear of talking to people is just to pick random numbers in the telephone book and to dial them and convince them to tell you what movie to see that night. And so I would call these people. I'm like, oh wait, this isn't the movie theater? Oh, my bad. Well, look, I'm on the phone with you anyway, and I got to go out tonight. What should I see? I would do that literally 100 times a day to get over my fear. That's where it came from, was you did that exercise constantly.
That is a great exercise. Yeah. I was forced to just do it at a job where they were like, this is how you make your money. You have to dial for dollars. So it was different, but that's great to hear, because I'll pick on you for a second. I know you don't like that, but when I met him, he was I can't. He likes being here. But here, he didn't have that ability. And I was like, there's no fear. Nothing happens on the phone. People
and it's okay to have fear. You got to do it anyway. I think that when I cold call people, at first it seemed like this. Yeah. It's me versus you. Yeah. And you gotta change it to where we're sitting on the same side of the table. And there's little tricks where it's one, you have to get someone's attention. And two, if you reciprocate or you explain to them that you're fearful or whatever, they'll reveal a similar type of emotional feeling. And so you just, if you get, and you also have to be, I find my trick is being self-deprecating. So I told you I cold called this guy who was this billionaire who bought this company, and I was right away, hey, this is a really weird call, and I'm so sorry for bothering you, and what I'm about to say sounds super douchey. So I was self-deprecating by acknowledging it's weird, and I was revealing something to him, and and I grabbed his attention by saying this is douchey. So I'm doing this on purpose, and it's now natural, but and then it breaks their frame where they're like, wait, what? And then and then I don't want to be cocky, and I know this is gonna sound cocky, I'm so sorry, but here's the deal. And so it's boom. So that's AIDA, attention, interest, desire, action. I got your attention. Now you're interested because I just acknowledged that I'm about to say something ridiculous, and then I'm gonna get to the D where I'm gonna make you desire it by saying I have this thing, and you're gonna know about it in the next 2 years. Let's talk now. So I just go through that. AIDA.
Is AIDA from selling to Vito?
It's the most classic frame.
It's a classic frame. I think are you thinking of Glenn Ross, where he's attention, interest, desire?
That's where he's yeah. Well, no, selling to Vito is an old school sales book. Very important top officers. So I knew it was one of the two, but it probably is Glenn Gary.
It's a classic sales tactic, and I just heard that. I'm I'm just going to do that.
I like it.
No. So it was all on AIDA, so for cold calling. Yeah. And there's this other thing, which is I heard this story about Chris Rock, where he was dude, if you're pushing a car on the side of the road, if you're broken down the side of the road with your thumb up, people won't help you. But if you see a guy pushing his car, you're gonna get out and help him.
It happened to us.
Yeah. And like,
ran out of gas and that we were pushing and a guy jumped down.
Yeah, people will help you. And so I take that attitude with cold calls. It's like, hey, look, I'm a nobody, but I'm trying to do this thing.
Yeah.
And it's a shot. Yeah. And people like helping people who are helping themselves. Yeah. So like, I just use all those emotional triggers and it usually works.
Yeah. Well, let's turn it and talk about some of your emotional triggers. So when you were at the peak of the hustle, I imagine you're getting some inbounds and folks that are interested in potentially acquiring the thing
all the time.
Yeah. But what was the moment for you that clicked and you said, you know what? It's time to go down the journey of potentially selling this thing?
Well, I wanted to be wealthy and liquid. So like, I was always like interested in selling. Dude, you guys know Vice?
Yeah, of course.
Horrible company.
Yeah.
Went out of business recently. Like, it sucks. At the time, I thought they were the best.
They were at one point.
And they like cold emailed me and they like flew me out. And they're like, we'll buy you. And at the time we were like a year, 2 years in, and they're like 10 million in Vice stock. And I get to their office. I'm like, where is everyone? And they're like, oh, they're all in sexual harassment training because some guy, like our CMO or something like that, just did something wrong. And I was like, oh, fuck that. I don't know if I want to be here. And turns out that was a good pick because their company, their stock would have been worth zero. And so I was like devastated.
You can't talk about wieners there, you know?
Yeah, definitely not. And I was like devastated that the company, like someone wanted to buy me and I was like, oh, fuck, I failed. No, like this was a shit offer. So I was pretty bummed out about it. And then HubSpot emailed me. And so I changed my behavior to where I was no longer like wanting to sell. I was like, I'm not even interested. And so they like, hey, we want to partner with you. And my reply was, I don't know what partnership is, but I looked you up on LinkedIn and you're in the M&A or corporate development department. Are you emailing me because you want to buy me? And he just replied, yeah. I go, all right, cool. Here's a Google Doc that explains all the reasons why you shouldn't buy us. And I listed like all the skeletons I thought that someone would find in due diligence, which none of it was actually that big of a deal. And he goes, yeah, none of this is a red flag. We're still interested. I go, great, let's talk. And that was how the conversation started. That was in September of 20.
Where did you learn that skill set? You're very frank. You're very forward. Like not a lot of people have that in them to be so bold as to flip it on its head or to say, are you trying to buy me? Like, and you seem like you just cut right through the bullshit. You have no time always. But where did it come from?
I think my parents were like that. I don't know where it came from. I think
it's an incredible.
I think what I found, and this is weird. It goes back to like trying to meet girls of like if I can make you smile, I'm in. And if I could say something ridiculous and that makes you smile, I'm in. And so I think I just found that out. And I also found if I could say blunt stuff, but I could say it in a not rude way, like by me smiling or doing self-deprecation, I can get away with it.
Yeah.
And I just realized I can get to my desired outcome a lot faster if I could be blunt. And as long as I make them smile or disarm them, I'm good. They're not going to think I'm offensive. I think that's where it kind of came from.
Listen, I'm a big fan.
But I was worn out. Like I was like, it was also like, I don't want to waste anyone's time. I'm on a mission. And so that's kind of where it happened. And they were interested. And their premise of buying the company was basically like HubSpot reaches so many people through their blog that they like had to acquire a media property to reach more people. And they were advertising with us. They had spent hundreds of thousands of dollars advertising with us and they made so much money. And they're like, did the math. They're like, well, if we just bought this thing, we'll just make, because HubSpot sells CRM software to small business owners. And I had at the time 1.8 million subscribers and a lot of them were small business owners. And they're like, well, if we just bought this, we'll make this much revenue and our market cap is whatever it is. That means our market cap can improve by like $300 or $400 million. You know what I mean? Like that was like the math I imagined. And they wanted to buy us. And I was like, yeah, this is a smart idea. At the time, I thought like, this was before we knew WeWork was like shit. Mm-hmm. But I was like, dude, WeWork or LinkedIn should buy us, not a media company. And HubSpot came calling and they were the first that had the courage to make that work.
How long was that process? When they
cold emailed me. I was living in Brooklyn at the time. We do our summers in Brooklyn. I was living in Cobble Hill. That was in September of 20. The deal closed February of 21. Okay. So it was 1 month roughly before we got to the letter of intent. And then after the letter of intent, it was 90 days.
Okay.
So it was what's that, 4 months maybe?
Yeah.
4 or 5 months?
Yeah, 4 or 5 months. And how did you, like, was it a rough process?
It wasn't rough in the sense of they thought it was rough, but I thought it was rough. Yeah, I wanted to like I laid on the floor like every night telling my wife, I can't do this. Yeah, it was miserable. Because think about it, you're about like, they buy companies all the time. This is one of my first times. This changes my life. It means nothing to them. Yeah, it was horrible. Like every day I was like, if they find out, once they find this thing out, it's done. And like, that wasn't the case. Our business was like really well run. But yeah, it was miserable. It was miserable. Even if it goes well, it's a miserable period. And also we only had 30 or 40 employees and we sold for many tens of millions of dollars. And the issue is that when you sell for tens of millions of dollars, it's the same amount of work as if you sell for hundreds or billions of dollars. It's like, it's not a small enough deal that you can like skip over shit. You got to like sweat the details. But with 30 or 40 people, I don't have like an HR. I had like a lady who worked for me who did accounting and HR. And it was like me and Edie, this like 65-year-old woman who had to teach how to use Dropbox. It was just us like getting all the, like I used to hear her like take pictures with her phone of the screen. I'm like, Edie, that's not how you take a screenshot. Like
Yeah, something like that in our team.
and like you're on the phone with like literally 10 of their lawyers and 10 of their KPMG or whatever it is, accounting firm. And then like 5, and then just me.
Yeah.
And they're like, after like, hey, do you have like your 5-year projections? I'm like, no, we're 3.5 years old. No, like, I don't even know what we're gonna do in 6. And so like, they would ask for all this stuff and it was so stressful to like look silly. And I didn't hire a banker. So I did all the work. I did all the
You
negotiation.
didn't hire it? Wow.
Because I had hired a banker before and I hated the experience. And so I was able to negotiate HubSpot to the number that I wanted. And I was like, I guess I don't need a banker.
Did they hold on to that? Did they pull any punches at the end or anything?
No, they were straight. The cool thing about selling to such a huge company like HubSpot is like my deal. Let's say if I sold for $30 to $50 million, they don't care about, that's like nothing to them.
Mm-hmm.
And they care about their reputation. So no, they didn't jerk me around in the slightest.
So when the document's signed and the wire drops, the wire hits, how did you feel? Do you remember where you were?
Dude, you know what's funny is like even before I talked to HubSpot, I used to use this personal finance app called like Personal Capital, and they have like a manual account that you can just add in, and I just put $20 million in there, and I was like, just let me see what this feels like. Like, what's it like when you see like all these numbers on your screen? Like, let me feel what that feels like. And so I weirdly got used to it, even though obviously it didn't exist. And so when the numbers hit, I was like, yeah, I just replaced that number with this number, the number's there. But no, it was scary. I remember going to the bank and I'm like, hey, like, I'm about to have like a large sum come in. Do you need to know that I'm not like doing something illegal, or like, are you going to like deny this wire? Or, like, what do I do? Do I like warn you? And they're like, no, you're good. And so, yeah, the wire came in. It was like the greatest feeling ever.
Where were you?
I was in my kitchen in Austin with my wife and I, and we were sitting there like refreshing. And we're like, boom, it's there. And it felt like a huge relief. But also my wife worked at Airbnb for many years. Airbnb went public in November or December. We sold in February. So 2 or 3 months prior, we became millionaires because my wife did. My wife was richer than I was because of the Airbnb stock. And so I felt that, and it was like euphoria. And then we felt it a lot more like 2 months later. And so it was like COVID was bad for a lot of people, but we made it rain, and it felt awesome. And it felt like a lot of luck. And then a week or 2 weeks after the sale went through, the CEO got into a life-threatening accident. And I was like, dude, like,
Was that Brian at the time?
Brian, yeah. He like got in a snowmobile accident. He thought he was gonna die, and he turned out to be fine. But I was like, if that happened like 2 weeks prior, like this could have been dead. Like, it was just crazy how much luck is involved in some of these things. But yeah, it was awesome when the wire went through. Like, you know that study that says like $75,000 and anything above doesn't make you happier? It's fucking bullshit.
Yes.
That's bullshit. Maybe there is a number to where it doesn't matter. It ain't 75.
Yeah.
And so like I got to experience, like, I got to test that theory, and that felt really exciting.
Yeah, I saw there was a video of a guy. He's like, once you get to the Bugattis, he's like, it doesn't matter. It's like, I have 10 of them. He's like, it doesn't make me happier. But there is one.
There is a number.
Yeah.
And like, frankly, having a Bugatti is probably a pain in the ass. There is a number, but like the number is definitely somewhere where it's like you have enough to live the life you want forever. And that varies depending on where you live.
Indeed.
So that got.
No, I just said.
I was gonna say, so that happens, and you have clearly you and your wife both have these life-changing moments within a few months of one another, right? And then what? one of the things we hear a lot from entrepreneurs in the show is this idea of like the entrepreneur's epilogue, which is like after it happens, after the sale, then what? Like who is Sam after?
I was like, I'm going to take a few months to a year to chill. It took like 6 months and I got like jacked. Like I was like pretty fat, like leading up to it. I got pretty round. And so I was like, I'm going to spend 6 months just like lifting weights and eating good. And I got really fit. And then after like 3 to 6 months, I was like, all right, I need to get after it. Like it felt nice to have a minute to chill, but like I'm a man, I got to contribute. Like I got to like produce because I feel like crap just sitting here all day. And I felt really lonely. I was really lonely.
Talk about that, because that's something I think that a lot of people on the show comes up a lot.
Well, you just like don't like when you work a lot, you shouldn't really totally become friends with your coworkers. Like when there was ever alcohol around, I bounced. So I wasn't like that tight with them, but I talked to them every day and I felt like we had a mission together and it felt like we were troops, like in the trenches together. And that was awesome. At the time I was like, oh, this is really hard. But then when I didn't have it, I was like, oh, it's cool to have that community. And I didn't have that anymore because I never worked at HubSpot. So I was pretty much out right away. And so I partnered with this guy named Joe Spicer and we angel invested a ton. I think we invested something like $14 million in different companies, and angel investing was stupid, but I didn't like it, but it felt awesome to have a partner in crime. And I was like, hey, I got to start a company again. Do you want to start one with me? I have this idea. And so I basically had a little bit of a chip on my shoulder that I was a one-hit wonder. And so I did a ton of research on communities, and I did the research publicly where I had people on my podcast who had communities. And I was like, I got this idea for community. I screwed it up at the hustle, but I think I can get it right this time. Let's start this thing. And him and I got it to like 2 million in revenue without telling the world that we were even doing it. And then we were like, this is going to be a thing. So we hired a CEO, and then we shared after 8 or 10 months of working on it. But I was basically like, Joe, I have to start something. I need to be in the trenches again. I can't just be sitting here reading all day and working out. Like this is meaningless.
Why is angel investing stupid?
Because it's not stupid for everyone. My returns are good. My returns are great. But for me, I would give someone money and I would never talk to them again. And so I didn't have like a dopamine rush of like, and you like, don't talk to them for 7 or 10 years. And so I think I'll make a lot of money from it. And so in that regard, it's good, but I found it to be incredibly boring.
What's your thesis or criteria on what you'll invest in?
I didn't have one. I didn't have like I'm not analytical enough to be good at it. I think I think maybe I got lucky enough, and that's why it will be good. But I didn't have like a thesis. It was just like, do I think this is cool, and do I think this can make like 50 times my money? But it's basically it.
So just bet on the person, bet on the idea. Which horse or jockey?
Dude, I didn't even have like a premise. Like I just
gut feeling.
Yeah. Sometimes it was like, this product is so good that it will probably work even if you're an idiot or not, which they never are. But, and sometimes it was like, this person is so charismatic that I think they can sell anything to anyone and we're going to get a return. Or like sometimes, like, for example, one of my good friends is this guy named Nathan Barry who has ConvertKit.
Yeah, of course.
And he's such a trusting, honest person that I'm like, I don't care what you're going to do. Here's $50,000 and just, if you ever need anything, let me know. But I don't think you're going to lose any money. I think you'll figure it out. And so like, there are some people where I'm like, whatever you're into, I don't need to see your deck. I'm in. Got it. So that happens a bunch.
You said something recently. There's 2 things I got to dive into, or I'm going to get in trouble from the audience because they want to know how you hire CEOs, because that's a big move, and you're clearly really good at hiring. You've said that a couple times in the show. But before we do that, you said something on Andrew's pod recently where you said no new friends, and you say that in your family a lot. Yeah. Right? I want to just understand how you came to that thought, but also it sounds like you have a lot of great friends that are awesome entrepreneurs. So
I have a small circle.
Okay.
So I've got a small circle of people who like, they could have my bank account login, like, or they're on like my kids' trust or whatever. And like, I trust them with my life, and it's like 4 guys, and it's like, you can know everything and I will know everything about you, and we'll help each other no matter what. And then I have like a ton of acquaintances. So I didn't want to, we started this podcast thing at the hustle, and that like blew up, and I didn't care about being popular. I didn't care if we were popular. I didn't care if we weren't. I just wanted to make money.
You're talking about My First Million, just for the audience,
My
right?
First Million.
Yeah, right.
And that kind of blew up. And then The Hustle, because it's a media company, by nature, you have to be popular in order to get big. So that, like, I got really popular because of The Hustle. We were reaching millions and millions of people a month. But as it got more popular, I got really uncomfortable with like the being out in public. I find it to be very, like, you don't have a lot of privacy, and like,
It's weird when someone's just fucking staring at you like
it's
they know you,
weird.
but you don't know them.
Yeah, and it's weird. It's also weird because they think that you're like a guru, and it's like, dude, I don't know anything. Like, don't listen to my advice. Like, I'm explaining my opinion, but like, I'm wrong all the time. So like, it felt like a weird responsibility that I didn't like. But it's basically my job, so I do it. But basically, like, I would get all these people wanting stuff from me. Like, everyone wants something, whether it's just advice, or I notice they always want 30 minutes of your time. And I'm like, I don't want to give you my time. That's the most, I don't want to give you my most valuable resource. And so I just basically made this rule where, and I break the rule, but it was like, no new friends. I don't need new friends. I just need to be in a quiet room, and I focus on my family, my fitness, my finances, and fun. Like, those are the only 4 things I care about. I don't need new friends. I've got an awesome group that's been with me from the beginning. I don't need like new people like that in my life. And of course I do let new people in all the time, but I wanted to publicly be like, I don't need any of that. I have my group, nothing. I don't need anything else.
Keeps away the asshole high school investment bankers like you talked about before.
Which happens a lot, and it's ridiculous. It's stupid. Yeah. It's like, it's very easy to see through. So yeah, I just didn't. And when you're public, and I sold to a public company, so like, people know your shit, and like, it is quite it can be really uncomfortable because you don't know who actually likes you versus who wants something.
Yeah, no, I can see, especially now as a new parent, right? You know, it's like,
yeah, and that, like, I used to joke with my wife. I'm like, the biggest concern of this pregnancy or this kid isn't that she is healthy or you are healthy. It's, am I going to go to jail for like fucking someone up? Like, because I feel threatened.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. And so, yeah. And it feels weird because I'm not actually a celebrity, because like a Brad Pitt or someone like that, they play a character. And so you fall in love with the character, and they're
Sam, yeah,
and they're actually famous. So if you see them in public, you're like, I don't want to bother that person. But when you have a podcast, you're in someone's ear. A, you get to know them a lot. You get to know their personal life a lot. And B, they don't actually think that other people know who I am. So they have no problem coming up and be like, what's up, bro? And like bothering you a lot. And because, again, it's not actual fame, but it's popularity. And they don't think that anyone knows who you are. So they're like, oh, it's okay, I can bother you because it's just me and you. And so that became a little bit, it kind of became weird. But I feel a lot of gratitude towards anyone who does say hi, though.
That's cool.
It feels awesome.
You said that you are really good at building companies like $1 to $5 million in revenue, that you brute strength it, you hustle it through, you get them to 1 to 5, and then you bring a CEO in. What is do you have a methodology, or do you have a framework for hiring with CEOs?
I'm still trying to figure it out, for one. So, but I've done it a few times well. I've done it a few times not good. The person who is the CEO of Hampton, he previously was the chief growth officer at Motley Fool, which is like a
of course,
$500 million a year business. I had hired him to be the CEO of The Hustle, like literally the weeks of selling the company. And so like, I was like, dude, I'm so sorry, I got to take this offer. You still want to join anyway? And you could run it with an HubSpot. And he did. And so I got to know him that way. And then when we started Hampton, I was like, hey, do you want to come run this thing? And we could do it again. But usually what I look for is someone, if I kind of prefer someone who's been there, done that. So someone who's already grown something before, at least when it comes to being a CEO. So I look for that. So I also have to do a good job of giving them autonomy. And so I really try to make it a partnership where if I think they're going to make a mistake, I'm like, my opinion is this or this, but you're the boss. And if it costs you money, sometimes you just got to take that. That's just kind of the cost of doing business. For finding a CEO, I really look at what their like writing is. I like to look at like what content they produce, because I want to see how they think. And so I do that a ton. And then I do a ton of reference checks, but I don't reference check the people they give me. I'll call the 3 references and I'll say, what other 3 people did they work with? And then I'll call like those 9 people. And so I'll do that. And then I'll say like, on a scale of 1 to 10, what do you give this person? They always say 7 or 8 or 9. I'm like, all right, cool. What do they need to become a perfect 10? And that's when they'll tell me what their weaknesses. And I'm like, all right, is that weakness that I'm willing to put up with? Yeah, that is or that isn't. And so I do a shit ton of reference checks. And then I also like want to know, like, have you already grown a company? And have you done this before? Because I kind of want someone who's been there, done that, at least when it comes to the CEO role. Not always, but a lot of
So you're not using like an executive search recruiter. You're digging in. And
no, I have. Ty Burke from Search Partners is who I use, and I'll talk to, we'll get a ton of people. Yeah, I'll use a recruiter.
But then you still dig in, go real deep on it.
Yeah, for sure.
What happens when it goes bad? How quickly do you, like, when do you have a, like, have you seen it go bad? Have you pulled a plug quickly? Like,
yeah, you know, you kind of can know it's going to go bad in the first couple months. And I've screwed up a bunch of times where I've not pulled the plug because, like, literally you're willing to lose millions of dollars just because you're afraid of that conversation, which is like insane to me that I do that. And a lot of people do that. It's a really common thing. So no, I think you know right away if it's like within 2 or 3 months, like if it's going to be good or not.
Yeah.
And I think that, like, when I sold my last company, the question was like, would I want to go and hire that person again to start my new thing? And for a bunch of people, it was like, yeah, I would do anything. I'll do with you it again. But you have to do a good job of asking yourself that, like, all the time of like, want to make the same hire again? Because the answer is you can change it. You can get rid of them. And if the answer isn't yes, then like you've made a mistake.
How many things have you started that the world hasn't seen because they failed? You seem like the type of person that comes up with an idea and just hits go.
I'm really focused though. So like I am really focused. So I don't do a ton of, I think about a ton of stuff and I write it out and I do all the research and I'll call a ton of people. But when I make a bet, I try to do like with a high concentration of like, I believe with a high degree of certainty that this can work. And so when I do research, because I failed to hit that 100 million revenue mark, now it's like, what can I get to 100 million in like 7 years? Mm-hmm. And so I do research on those, on what I think that could be. And when I think something actually has legs, I like go all in only on that and I don't do any projects.
Nice.
So it's, I focus a lot. I think people think that I don't, but no, it's like, it's that one thing. My opinion is it's hard to do more than one thing at once well.
Yeah.
It's not impossible. A lot of people do it, but it's hard.
Why do you think you failed that community and with the hustle?
Because I charged too little. So pricing was a massive issue. Pricing and positioning. I should have sold it to businesses, not consumers.
Yeah, you said that earlier.
So pricing was a big deal and positioning. I started, I think, how old was I with Trends? 28 or 29? I don't remember. No, 27. And I like was still kind of broke and I didn't like imagine that businesses actually pay a lot of money for things. And so I did I didn't put myself in the customer's shoes and look at the true value that we could provide as opposed to thinking like, well, this seems cheap enough. And so pricing was a major issue.
I want to talk about positioning for a second because most of the money that I made in one of our first companies that would kind of really catapulted my career.
What was the company?
Digital Surgeons, was around this concept of branding. And branding is sort of one of my superpowers. I know you talked recently about how you invested in brand for Hampton and you kind of put together a whole...
That's the first time I've done that.
Yeah, it's the first time you've done that. And you had a great outcome from that. You were very happy with that. So can you talk about just now that you've learned, now that you've had a good experience with it, what's the value of brand and how do you think about it now moving forward?
I think for people who don't have a proven track record of following through and actually building cool shit, branding is like just... it's just like mental masturbation. It's just like, dude, it's procrastination. You're putting this shit off because you think you need a good domain name. You think you need a good brand when that's nonsense. You need a product that solves a problem and you need to go get customers. And then you could figure the branding out. Once I developed an audience and I felt confident in my ability to execute, then I was like, you got to nail the brand at first. And you have to really nail it, just like you got to nail culture at first.
Right.
And so like before with my companies, it was more so like, dude, I just got to pay the rent. And so I'll just do anything. And I'll figure the branding out later. Now it's more so like, I think this thing can last for many decades. I want to list out the type of person I want to hire and work with. I want to list out my values and I want to list out the brand early on because I think it's going to work and you got to get it right early on because then it's a pain in the ass when you got to go back and redo it. And so, yeah, we hired branding agencies early on, which is something I never thought I would do.
That's awesome.
So yeah, it worked.
I thought it was when you named Hampton, I thought it had to do with the Hamptons, but obviously the street.
I grew up in Hampton on Hampton Avenue in Missouri.
No, the street story is cool. I know we're just about out of time for today. Is there anything that we didn't talk about today on the pod that you're like, I really wish these guys brought up?
I don't know. You tell me. Is there anything?
Why are you better than Vistage? Because I personally have never, and I know you're friends with the guy now, so maybe you don't want to talk about this if you don't want, but like we've been approached by Vistage 75 times, maybe 100. I might have got an email from a Vistage guy like a week ago.
Well, I don't think we're better. I think we're different. Frankly, they're better. They've been around since the 60s. Their sales process as a company, they're better, right? They're bigger. They're more profitable. Their company is honed in. They know what they're doing. It's a wonderful team. I think we're different, and I think we will be better. I think we're different in that the Vistage is typically an older person. Mm-hmm. They're typically a little bit more blue collar. So it's like someone who owns a plumbing business or something like that. Hampton is the market that we were trying to address, or the problem we're trying to address, is for digital first. There's a whole bunch of 20, 30, 40 somethings who make a living. A lot of them are in like Idaho or New Haven or somewhere that isn't San Francisco, LA, or New York, and they feel lonely, and they run a digital business where if they were to meet with Vistage or YPO or something like that, they can get a lot of value, but it's maybe like their peer is someone who owns like 18 apartment buildings in South Florida. And it's like, dude, I don't know if I can learn about life from you, but I don't know if I can learn about like the problems that I'm having in business. And so the hole in the market was, we felt there was an unaddressed solution for digital, we call them like digitally native companies. So it's not like necessarily a tech company, but we do have a lot of tech companies. It's someone who just is internet or digital first, as opposed to someone who owns a really awesome HVAC company.
I'll throw a testimonial out there for you just for the public, because, why the hell not? But I got approached by the YPO and the EOs and the different groups like that. Vistage, we've had 1 million emails over the thing. I have to say, like, I was super pumped to join Hampton. I think I've met some incredible new friends there. The retreat was incredible.
Who have you met that you like?
I mean, who haven't I met? Samantha Rose, Devin Heath,
cool.
I mean, so many people. It's like, I'm just trying to think who else. Like,
I mean, it's cool. It's because they just have a little bit more similar values.
Yeah, Isan Gabe, like it's just like there's been so many people. My core group's incredible. We're already planning to get together this summer and just go hang out for fun. And
we're making a switch soon, I think, by the way. One thing we're going to try is in-person core groups as opposed to digital only. And I think that's going to like change things dramatically. I prefer digital. A lot more people prefer in-person. So we're going to make that switch soon. I think it's going to be a huge company. I think so too. You just got to go slow. Yeah. With community, you got to go slow.
I love that you and your partner look at every single applicant.
Yeah, we watch 100% of them.
That's amazing.
Joe does mostly, and we watch most of them, or all of them. Community has to go slow, but you'd be shocked. Vistage makes hundreds of millions a year in EBITDA. It's a huge company. Yeah. So same way with email, where I would do the math and I'm like, this is a thing, but no one is actually taking this seriously. I feel that same way with this business. Yeah. And those are really cool companies to be in, where people think it's a hobby or it's a joke, and you're like, no, dude, do the math. Like, if you get 10,000 people at $10,000, that's $100 million. Like, this could be thing. Yeah. And Vistage probably has 30,000 members, and I don't know how much that costs. What's it cost? 20 grand? I don't even know.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
But like, it's cool to see businesses where people don't take seriously, where it's like hustles, but you're like, I don't know. It
feels dated though. Like I would say it feels like back in the day when you used to walk into a Regis versus a WeWork back in the day.
Like, I think that's a great.
For me, it's a brand experience thing. And what I would say is,
that's a great analogy.
I've invested. So I've written checks to Hampton members for ventures that they're doing. I know you have, of course. And I'm probably going to go on to start some companies with people I've met.
It's awesome. I just want to throw that out. That's awesome. Thank you. Dude, I invested in this thing called Figure. Have you seen Figure?
Yeah, of course.
I was in their seed round. Which
are they going to send you a rollout for the house?
That'd be fucking awesome. Their seed round was still worth like hundreds of millions. It wasn't like
it went to my fucking junk mail. I signed up. I signed up for the NDA. I signed it, and it went to my junk mail, and I missed the investment, and I want to shoot myself.
Dude, like, I'm going to sound crazy here. I think there's a world where I will make tens of millions of dollars off that small investment, because I legitimately think that there's a 1% to 5% chance that it can become $1 trillion company.
Yeah. Bezos is in the fucking cap.
Yeah. I think that company is so interesting. That's gonna pay for all the investments and more, I hope. I think that company is awesome. Those guys, Brad Adcock's amazing.
Yeah, I totally agree. And he's in the group as well. So this has been an amazing show. Thank you again for taking the time to come on. What's next for Sam?
Nothing. People ask that. I'm like, nothing. I do the same shit every day. That's like growth. You just, like, it ain't cool. You just do, I do the same shit. I'm going to do the same shit every day for the next 10 years, and hopefully it's going to be awesome. But
last question.
Nothing new. Oh, I launched a new website for fun, samslist.co. I hired this young woman to run it, but it's like Yelp for accountants. I think that will be interesting, but I got to prove if it's actually could be cool yet.
Love that.
So that's the only new thing, but there's probably not going to see a lot of new stuff. I'm just going to do the same shit every day for like 10 years and hopefully it'll be awesome at the end.
Sign up.
Officially, I want to ask you a question.
I have just one quick question. You can finish this up. You'll close us. My selfish last question is, how has becoming a father transformed who you are both as a human and as an entrepreneur?
It's awesome. I feel like such a man. I feel so masculine, where it's like, it's so awesome to have a daughter and it's like, I've got to like take care of her. And like work never felt like a purpose. It just felt like work. It felt like fun and selfish. This having a kid and a family and a wife, it feels badass. It feels like I have a purpose. I believe in a very like traditional like masculinity of like your goal as a man is to provide emotionally and physically and financially for that family, and you dedicate your life to that. And it feels really cool to like have that dedication.
I also love that your wife became a millionaire before you, because that to me just adds.
Fuck yeah,
it's awesome.
You know what Chris Rock says a father's role is when he has a daughter?
Keep profitable.
We could say it that way too. Like, but
you said those are Chris Rock's words, not mine.
It feels awesome.
He brought up Chris Rock, so I had to.
It feels awesome to have that responsibility, though. You know what I mean?
No,
like
listen.
to like dedicate yourself to someone.
We knew a tech entrepreneur, a brilliant guy, Mike Rosati, and he said that when I had my first daughter, he said, "Are you going to introduce her to Barbies?" And I said, "I don't know. I mean, isn't that what girls do?" He said, "Would you rather show her this woman that belongs on that everybody puts on a pedestal and like dresses up and all this stuff, or would you rather show her superheroes?" And so I actually didn't lean Barbie, and I went Power Rangers, even because the Pink Rangers, fighters, this, that, and just gave a completely different perspective. She still had her dolls, but as a result of that, I think I'm able to tell her like you can be a lot more, and I think that there's something special about raising daughters. I have two.
It feels special, totally. It also feels like if you're like a man's man, you're like, fuck all this stuff. Like this is weak. This is soft. It feels nice to like see that soft side and like embrace it and to like understand like what women go through. And I find that to be quite. It's nice to have that perspective. It's nice to like to hopefully raise a strong woman. It feels good to like. I guess I'm like a feminist now. Like I'm like
it lightens you.
It's cool to have like a different perspective. I want to have a boy too, but it feels awesome to have like this precious thing that like
boys age you.
Oh, but I've never experienced this, but I'm excited when they're in their 20s and 30s where I can become friends with them a little bit.
Agreed.
But
you want to talk about niches? Girl dad is a niche that you should definitely look into if you haven't.
Yeah, dude. And boy dad, like when you have a boy, it seems fucking exhausting.
It is. Oh my God, he's full send every day. I just say thank you. He's alive. Every day.
You had one last question.
Yes. You launched a podcast, the first million.
My first million.
My first million. You got to how many listeners monthly?
Last year. Across YouTube and podcasts, it was 90 million.
90 million. That's unbelievable. Pete and I have been working our asses off for 2 years. We're 50, almost 60 episodes into Forward Obsessed. We're in the thousands, right? People really watching this. But you've done it at such a scale. Obviously, you started with a list.
It makes it way easier. I started with a list of 1 million people.
What would you do to grow this podcast?
Okay, so I've got bad news for you. Podcasts are the hardest thing, I think, to grow. I think they're also the most rewarding if you get it right, both emotionally and financially rewarding.
Yeah.
Stick with it for 5 years as a minimum. I heard is someone said to me recently.
It's hard to grow. The reason they're hard to grow is there's no awesome discovery platform for podcasts. It's not like YouTube where you click video. With podcasts, you go to your app store every once in a while. You look at the charts, you'll scroll into the top 10 or top 20, or you'll see what's Apple or Spotify recommending. The discovery is the hardest part. So if you notice that your retention is high and that the same people, you got to make sure, do I have like a mousetrap that works, right? So and then after that, to get new customers, I think so I'll break down the few ways I think to grow. So, well, first of all, in order to have a good podcast, my opinion is going to fall into one of 3 categories. Category 1 is super high production value. So you look at something like whatever Wondery produces or like Serial. So it's like this like high production, they get like amazing interviews and they like weave this story together. My new podcast, Money Wise, that's in that category, I hope. Number 2, the second category is like the most like unique perspective. Here's an example. LeBron James with the podcast. dude, I don't care if he's recording on his iPhone. I'm going to listen to that if I like basketball because it's like literally the best basketball player in the world. Or All In podcast. It's billionaires talking about business. Like there's like no one else doing that. So that perspective is unique. So it doesn't matter about production. Number 3 is like the best delivery. Most comedians fall into this category. So Theo Von, he's like silly. I don't care what he talks about. It's just like,
Schultz.
yeah, it's just like, dude, it's funny. I'm into it.
Yeah.
MFM is a combination of the bottom 2, not the first one. Our production is not good. It's average. And so you got to figure out to make it, my opinion is it's one or a couple of those categories. So you got to have a unique angle, a unique perspective, the best delivery, or some like worldly production. Once you have that figured out, so in order to get popular in podcasts, typically the way it works is you can use someone else's audience or an audience you have elsewhere. So TikTok, email, I had email, Instagram, whatever. The easiest thing to do is to get someone who is already listening to a podcast to listen to a second podcast. So you can, in order to do that, you either become a guest on other people's podcasts, or you buy ads on other people's podcasts, or you do swaps. So you find someone who's about your size and you say, hey, you recommend us, we recommend you. And then you climb your way up higher and higher and higher and do that. And you just do that over an extended period of time. So I think that's the easiest way to grow. If you are monetizing at a, let's say, so I've got a friend, Jordan Harbinger, he's monetizing, I don't know if these are his numbers, I'm making them up. Let's say he's monetizing at $25 per CPM.
Yeah.
He'll buy a shit ton of ads on smaller podcasts at a $15 CPM. Hopefully there's like an arbitrage there, but he's okay spending money to grow by buying ads on other people's podcasts or going on guests. And that's how he grew his audience. And I think that's the easiest way to grow is by getting your name on other people's podcasts as a guest, as a swap, or buying ads. That's it.
Sam Parr, you are the definition of forward obsessed. And we are so excited and happy to have had you on the show.
Well, I want to come back in a year and hopefully we'll see if any of this actually helped and you become like the biggest podcast in the world. But get ready. It's a grind. I'm 650 episodes in.
So you got us trumped.
It's worth it though.
Yeah, no, we honestly at an absolute minimum, selfishly, we get to meet great people like yourself and all the other guests we've had on the show. We get to learn unique perspective. We get, there's just a lot of great stuff that comes out of this. So whether we monetize it or not, I think we get a hell of a lot of value out of it.
It's worth it.
And we know our audience that is watching. They thank us. They come up to us. They tell us all the time that they love the show. They watch it all the time, or they listen to it when they're at the gym or whatever. So it makes total sense. That's a wrap. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Forward Obsessed. Please share this episode, subscribe, and leave a review on your podcast app. If you have feedback or suggestions for our next guest, visit us at forwardobsessed.com. If you want to dive deeper into every interview, subscribe to our Substack at forwardobsessed.substack.com. Also, find us on Instagram or TikTok at forwardobsessed to see all the best moments from every episode. This episode was produced by Robert Roach from District Studios in New Haven, Connecticut. If you would like to learn more about the team that makes this show possible, visit digitalsurgeons.com.